Okay, it's an honor today to have Michio Kaku visiting us. Michio holds the Henry Samat Chair and Professorship in Theoretical Physics at the City College of New York, the famous alma mater where my father attended back in the 1940s. He's taught there for 25 years. He did his undergraduate degree at Harvard and his PhD work at UC Berkeley, and he's long pursued the grand quest set out by Einstein and others to unite the fundamental forces of nature. The strong force, we should cite them all together here, the strong force, the weak force, gravity, and electromagnetism, into a single grand unified theory of everything. And he's co-founder of an attempt to do that called string field theory. His theoretical physics research has spanned topics including string theory, supergravity, supersymmetry, hadronic physics, and he did about 70 technical articles and several textbooks in his own field in physics. He's also, of course, as you all know, devoted substantial effort and creativity to communicating his excitement about science and implications of science to lay audiences, authoring a number of well-known books, including bestsellers, Hyperspace, The Physics of the Impossible, and The Physics of the Future. And beyond his books, he's written for popular science publications like Discover, Wired, and The New Scientist. He's hosted TV specials for BBC, Discovery Channel, the History Channel, and the Science Channel, and has a couple of fun radio shows, Science Fantastic and Explorations in Science, that you can listen to weekly, or I think sometimes when you have time, as I hear. And he's been also, what I found in researching some of his bio, been very active. I didn't even follow some of this in Science and Society with activities and efforts on nuclear weapons and their danger, global warming, and other challenges we face moving forward. He's here today to talk about his latest book, released just a couple of weeks back, called The Future of the Mind, on the scientific quest to understand, enhance, and empower the mind. This topic resonates with many of us deeply here at Microsoft Research. For many of us, it's the mind that's the big frontier and the big challenge for understanding, as big as any Big Bang ever was. So let me invite Michio up. Let me greet him.
Okay. Well, after such a great introduction, I can't wait to hear the speaker myself. And first time, also let me say that sometimes all these accolades can backfire. Recently, New York Magazine voted me as one of the 100 smartest people in New York. And I thought, wow, what an honor. Later, however, I have to confess, later I found out that Madonna also made that same list. And they told me that next year Lady Gaga is going to push me off the list entirely. What can I say? Well, today I'm going to talk about the future of the mind. And of course, it's very dangerous to talk about the future. Let me quote from that great philosopher of the Western world, Yogi Berra. Yogi Berra once said, quote, "Prediction is awfully hard to do, especially if it's about the future." Well, I'm a physicist. We can predict the evolution of the universe billions of years from now. So let me quote from that other great philosopher of the Western world, Woody Allen. Woody Allen once said, quote, "Eternity is an awful long time, especially toward the end." Well, I'm a physicist. What does a physicist do? Well, we invented the transistor. We invented the laser. We helped to assemble the first computer and the internet. We wrote the World Wide Web. And along the way, we also invented television. We invented radio, radar, microwaves, and don't forget, we helped to create the space program and the GPS system. And we physicists love to make predictions. When we helped to assemble the internet, one physicist predicted that the internet would become a forum of high culture, high art, and high society. Well, today we know that 5% of the internet is pornography. But that's because teenage boys log on to the internet. Just wait until the grandmas and grandpas log on to the internet. Then 50% of the internet will be pornography. Now, before we begin a discussion of what sits on your shoulders, something that weighs 3 pounds and is the most complex object in the universe, Before I begin a discussion, you may be saying to yourself, well, what's the difference between physicists, the chemists? Well, let me tell you a little story. During World War II, the Nazis captured a group of American scientists and called them spies, and they were going to be executed by firing squad. So they put up a geologist, a physicist, and a chemist about to be fired away by execution. Well, they aimed their rifles at the geologist, and the geologist suddenly said, "Earthquake! Earthquake!" Well, in the chaos, the geologist snuck away and escaped. Well, now it was the physicist's time to have him shot. So the Nazis raised their rifles at the physicist. And then the physicist said, "Lightning! Lightning!" And again, chaos, everyone ran off, and the physicist escaped. And now it was the chemist's turn. They turned their rifles at the chemist, and the chemist said, "Fire! Fire!" Now, we're going to talk about the brain today. And if we were to duplicate the brain using hardware, computer hardware, it would occupy a city block of blue jean computers, some of the most advanced on the earth. The energy consumption would be that of a nuclear power plant, a gigawatt of power, and it would take a river to cool it down. And your brain, however, only consumes 20 watts of power. So when someone calls you a dim bulb, that is a compliment. And your brain doesn't require a nuclear power plant to energize it, just a few hamburgers. So how is it possible? And now, because of modern physics, we've learned more in the last 5 to 10 years than in all of human history. You know, when I was a kid, I used to love reading science fiction. I read about telepathy, that is, reading minds. I read about telekinesis, moving objects with the mind. I read about recording memories. I read about photographing dreams. However, I tried very hard to read people's minds, and I finally came to the conclusion that maybe telepaths do exist, but I wasn't one of them. Well, today we can do all of the above. I will show you how we photograph thoughts, photograph dreams. One day you will push the play button and see the dream you had the previous night. I will show you how we can record memories, about how we can move objects with the mind and read minds. All this because of advanced physics just in the last 5 to 10 years. And this is my previous book, a New York Times bestseller. They used to say that the word physics would never, ever enter the New York Times bestseller list. I did it not once, but twice. Physics of the impossible goes not just 50 years into the future, it goes 500 years into the future. When we might have starships, we might have teleportation, we might even have time machines. And in this book, I answer the question, according to Einstein's theory, is it possible to go backwards in time and meet your teenage mother before you're born and she falls in love with you? Well, if your teenage mother falls in love with you before you're born, you're in deep doo-doo if that happens. Well, there's a lot of interest in the mind, because I'm proud to announce that my book, The Future of the Mind, is now number 4 on both the Barnes & Noble and the Amazon list of bestsellers in the United States. So it's already, and it's only been out for 1 week. So the 2 greatest mysteries in the universe. One of them is the origin of the universe, which is what I do for a living. I'm the co-founder of string field theory. And one day we hope that string theory will answer the question, why did we have a Big Bang anyway? The other great mystery is what sits on your shoulders, the most complex object known to science for the first time in history now, revealing its innermost secrets. And you probably heard President Barack Obama, in last year's State of the Union address, shocked the scientific community by announcing the Brain Initiative. You realize that the Human Genome Project, it only cost $3 billion. It mapped all the genes of our body, and it has opened up huge areas of genetics and medicine. The next big project, already devoted $1 billion from the European Union and the United States government into this project, is the Brain Project, to create a map of every single neuron in your body. which means that one day we will understand mental illness, one of the greatest afflictions of humanity, and perhaps even create not just a disk of the genome, but a disk containing your connectome. Every single neuron, all your memories, your desires, your hopes, dreams, encoded in a connectome. And if you have your genome and your connectome on two disks, and you put them together, then you may even have, in some sense, a form of immortality. This raises theological, ethical, religious questions. Who are you anyway? If you die, but your genome survives, and we can revive your body anytime, if we can bring back your consciousness at any time, then did you really die? This raises all sorts of questions about who are we? Are we nothing but information? So when I was a kid, I used to try to read people's thoughts. I would concentrate real hard to see whether or not I could be a telepath like we see in science fiction. Ultimately, I realized that all this is bunk. Without physics, you cannot read the mind. And then there's the movie The Matrix, where reality itself is nothing but an uploaded software program. Everything you see around you is fake. This is The Matrix. In fact, let me ask you a question. Late at night, just before you go to sleep, have you ever had that weird, bizarre thought that maybe The Matrix is right? Maybe the reality you see is an illusion. Maybe it's a software program. Maybe you are the only one that's really real. Ever had that thought late at night? And maybe it's all a test to see whether you're smart enough to figure it out, that everything you see is nothing but an uploaded memory. Ever had that idea? Raise your hand if you ever had that feeling. You're crazy. Give me a break. You think you're the only one in the universe? I'm the only one in the universe. I'm in bed right now. I'm just about to go to sleep. You are nothing but an uploaded memory. Now, is that possible? I will show the answer is yes. Last year, the first memory was successfully uploaded into a brain. I'll talk about that. Something that happened just last year. And then here's the former governor of California. That's what happens when you have a marriage uploaded into your memory. His marriage with Sharon Stone was uploaded into his memory, and there he is, okay, reacting to that. In fact, if you saw the movie, it's a very clever movie. Throughout the entire movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the good guy. You identify with him. He's the good guy battling the bad guys. Then at the very end of the movie, you find out that he's really the bad guy with all the good guy memories implanted into his mind. This is the only movie I'm aware of in which the hero and the villain are the same people. And then what about exoskeletons? Believe it or not, the United States Pentagon is dumping tens of millions of dollars to connect the mind to mechanical arms, legs, a complete exoskeleton. My colleague, Stephen Hawking, the great cosmologist, he now has lost control over all his bodily functions except his mind. We have now connected his mind to a laptop. Next time you see him on television, look at his right frame of his glasses. There's a chip and an antenna that picks up waves from his brain, decodes it, and allows him to communicate with the world. And so we're talking about brain-machine interface, one of the hottest fields now in neurology. And then people say, well, where do we have robots? Where's my robot maid? Where's my robot butler? Well, artificial intelligence turned out to be harder than we thought. But what about surrogates, avatars? They use a human brain wired up to control a perfect body. Avatars, you are placed in a pod and you control the motions of an organism, a living person, or maybe even a robot. Surrogates already exist. And the question is this the future of the space program? When we send into outer space robots that are cheap, they don't bellyache, they don't complain, they don't nag, and they don't have to come back. Controlled by astronauts sitting in their living room, mentally communicating with their surrogate. And then telekinesis. Telekinesis, the power to move objects with the mind. This is the movie Carrie, where a young girl who's telekinetic was abused by all her classmates. So in the final scene of the movie, she destroys the entire high school. What's the lesson here? The lesson here is never bring a telekinetic to the senior prom. And then, in the latest Superman movie, maybe you've seen it, every child knows that Superman's father and mother died when Krypton blew up, but not in the latest Superman movie. Russell Crowe here plays Superman's father. He's a hologram, energized by a software program that has memorized all of the memory circuits, the personality quirks of the father. The father comes back to life to talk to his son beyond the grave. One day, perhaps your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandkids will go to a library of souls, and have a conversation with you. Because your memories, your personalities, or your quirks are all encoded in a hologram that you can bring to life by simply pushing the play button. And then the question is, asked in Star Trek, asked by Isaac Asimov, can the mind exist outside of the body? It was Descartes who said that I think, therefore I am. Therefore, the mind is different from the body. That's called dualism. Recently, however, people say that's a bunch of nonsense. The mind is nothing but software running on wetware called the brain. That's all it is. It's one and the same thing. But now we realize they could be different. This goes back all the way back to the Middle Ages. We may have the ability to put your consciousness on a connectome and send it into outer space. This is the dream of Isaac Asimov, sending pure consciousness into outer space at the speed of light. No booster rockets, no movies like Gravity anymore, no accidents, pure thought on a laser beam shot at the speed of light throughout the universe. That could ultimately be the destiny of Homo sapiens. But let's get back down to earth. That's Hollywood. Now let's talk about reality. First of all, MRI scans allow us to look at energy flows, blood flows in the living brain. On the left, for example, is the brain when it tells the truth. Not much happens. On the right is the brain when it tells a lie. Yes, when it tells a lie. First, you have to know the truth. Then you have to create the lie. Then you have to calculate the consistency of the lie with all the lies you've been telling all these years. That's a lot of brain power. Your brain lights up like a Christmas tree. And so we can now see thoughts ricocheting across the brain like a ping pong ball, and we can now re-examine Freudian psychology, old wives' tales. We can now see what's true and what's not. For example, the brain. The brain is a museum of all the stages of its previous evolution, starting with the back. The back of your brain is the reptilian brain, the ancient part of your brain. If you have whiplash after an automobile accident, you will lose your sense of balance, appetite. Basic reptilian instincts are encoded in the back. When you're born as a baby, your brain grows in the forward direction, mimicking evolution of the last few 100 million years. So the growth of a baby's brain mimics our evolutionary past. As the brain goes forward, we get the monkey brain, the mammalian brain, the brain of emotions, the brain that calculates your relationship to other monkeys. And then at the very front is the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, the human brain. And now we can see whether or not old wives' tales are correct. For those of you who have children, you have always suspected that your teenage kids have brain damage. Well, it's true. We can actually show that the prefrontal cortex, right behind your forehead, that's where you are located. Ever wonder where you are? You are located right behind your forehead. That is not fully formed in teenagers, just as many parents have always suspected. Another old wives' tale, that when a man sees a pretty girl, he starts to act stupid. True. You can actually see that blood flow drains from the prefrontal cortex of a man when he talks to a pretty girl, and he starts to act retarded. Absolutely true. This was verified just last year by looking at the brain scans of college kids. Absolutely true. And so these old wives' tales can now be verified. Now, if I were to slice the brain horizontally now, you would see the motor cortex. And you can actually put electrodes on the surface of the exposed brain. The brain has no sense organs. The brain does not feel pain. You can remove the skull and you don't feel a thing. And then when you touch this part of the brain, your left side starts to move. You touch this part of the brain, and this part of the brain starts to move. And you can cut the link between the left and the right brains. For epileptics, the two halves ricochet off each other, creating positive feedback that is potentially fatal, causing convulsions. So doctors have to cut the link, and then some bizarre things begin to happen. In a person's brain that is cut in half, two personalities begin to emerge. Different personalities begin to emerge. And each of them try to control the hand. You can literally struggle with the other part of the brain for control of your organs, just like in the movie Dr. Strangelove. There's one documented case where one guy's left brain was an atheist and the other brain was a believer. This is true. You can imagine that one day we're going to find somebody whose left brain is Republican and his right brain is Democrat. And when you go to the polling booth to put down the lever, there's this big struggle in the polling booth when he puts down the lever. Absolutely true that the two brains start to emerge as two personalities. And so we can begin to test all the old wives' tales of the past. Now, in the old days, we used to put electrodes on the surface of the brain. And what came out was nonsense, gibberish, very, very complicated, all the average radio waves coming out. Now we have computers. Now we have MRI scans. And so we don't use this old dated technique anymore. However, with computers, you can actually make this sexy. On the upper left is Neurosky, where toys are now controlled by a headband, and you can go from one level to the other level in the video game mentally by mentally controlling the pictures. And in Japan, this is the rage of Japan on the right. It's a headband with two ears on it. When you meet someone at a party who's very interesting, your two ears go like this. When you meet someone who's a dud, a real jerk, a real bore, your ears go like that, okay? So you will always know if you're making an impression on somebody at a party, and you will always know whether or not you're going to go home alone that night. And I'm a professor. One day I'm going to have all my students put on these things, so I will know exactly who gets the A and who gets the F by looking at their ears, okay? Anyway, this is the rage in Japan. And on the lower left, people are already saying, well, look, if this technology is that advanced, why not replace the mouse? Why not mentally commune with a PC? In the future, we may walk into a room, control the lights, the temperature, your humidity, the internet, turn things on, and even control cars. Cars will drive themselves probably by the year 2020. And why not drive your car mentally? All these things might be possible, but of course there are some hiccups that we have to negotiate still. But yeah, this could be the future whereby we control things mentally. And as I said, it will be sexy. Madison Avenue is going to get a hold of this. All of a sudden, fashion models, all of a sudden the leaders of culture will start to have these headbands and deal with things mentally. And then here is my colleague, Stephen Hawking. He is paralyzed. He's lost control of his fingers now. He simply blinks when he wants something. But now, on his right frame, we have connected him to a laptop computer. Here's how it works. Sometimes we take a chip about the size of a dime and put it right on top of the brain. This is what we do at Brown University. And the chip goes right on the part of the brain that governs the motor cortex. It is then connected to a laptop computer that understands the impulses. For example, if you move your hand to the right, the chip registers the electrical impulses of moving your hand to the right, and it knows to move the cursor of a screen to the right. So eventually, the laptop gets a dictionary. You move your hand to the right, the cursor moves to the right. It gets a dictionary of motions, and then by mentally thinking, just by thinking, moving your hand to the right, the cursor will move to the right. So, this gentleman here is totally paralyzed. He had a massive stroke. He cannot talk to his loved ones, and yet we've connected him to a chip, to a laptop, to his wheelchair. He can now move his wheelchair. He can surf the web. He can write email, answer email, play video games, operate household appliances, and he is totally paralyzed. We can also do this with mechanical arms. This lady here can only communicate by blinking. Blinking is the only way she can communicate with the outside world. Again, at Brown University, they hooked her up to a mechanical arm, which can, in principle, write. She can write messages. So the gift of mobility is with us. And the military is now dumping tens of millions into something called revolutionary prosthetics. This gentleman here, along with thousands of others, have lost arms, legs because of roadside bombs in Iraq and Afghanistan. We are giving them the gift of mobility. These arms are the most advanced arms ever created at Johns Hopkins University under contract with the Pentagon. You can pick up an egg with these things. You can fist bump, you can high five, anything an ordinary person can do, you can do mentally. Mentally control not just an arm, but a leg. These are exoskeletons right out of the comic books, and they exist. In fact, at Duke University, there's a Brazilian neuroscientist at the one of the leaders of this technology. He has made a goal that in the next international soccer games in Brazil, the athlete who starts and opens up the soccer games will be totally paralyzed. Totally paralyzed, outfitted with an exoskeleton, allowing him to initiate the World Cup soccer games. That is a concrete goal by the neuroscience department at Duke University. And we talked about surrogates. Artificial intelligence turned out to be a lot harder than we thought. This is Asimo, one of the most advanced robots built in Japan. Japan makes 30% of all robots. Asimo can run, jump, climb upstairs, and he dances. In fact, he dances much better than me. I've been on several programs with him, and he outdances me every time. But I went up to the inventor of Asimo, one of our most advanced robots, and I asked him, how smart is Asimo anyway? And he was quite honest. Right in front of the TV camera, the inventor of Asimo said, Asimo has the intelligence of a cockroach, a retarded cockroach, a stupid, retarded, lobotomized cockroach. He can barely walk across the room unaided. He is a tape recorder for the most part. Every motion is pre-scripted. When I'm on television with him, it takes about 3 hours. 3 hours for the handlers to get all the motions just right. But now, we can connect him to a human who wears a helmet, picks up the brain waves of the brain, and then operates Asimo. You realize that this will eventually revolutionize everything, including education. Remember when we were kids, we used to play hooky? I mean, come on, fess up, right? Well, we can now create a surrogate in the classroom. This surrogate has within it a picture of you in your bed, sick. The teacher can see you, and you from your bed can actually see the teacher's face. This is going to revolutionize education. Isn't the future wonderful? You will never be able to play hooky ever again. And of course, another way to input information into the brain is through the eyes. The eyes are a direct extension of the brain, so why not put the internet in your contact lens? So who are the first people to buy internet contact lenses? College students taking final examinations. They will blink, and they will see all the answers to my final exam right there in their contact lens. Who's the second person to buy internet contact lenses? President Barack Obama, so he doesn't have to have these damn teleprompters giving him a speech all the time. Who's the third person to buy internet contact lenses? Vice President Joe Biden, so he's always on message and never says anything goofy. Who's the fourth person to buy internet contact lenses? Well, if you fell in love with somebody, but you're tongue-tied because you can't recite poetry, you can't say, oh, your eyes are like the sky, your lips are ruby red, never fear. The Romeos of the world will buy these contact lenses, and they will always have poetic words just gushing forth from their mouth. So for you Romeos out there, this is for you. And who else will buy these internet contact lenses? Husband and wives. They'll see each other's images and what they're looking at. So if your husband or wife always buys the wrong thing at the supermarket, never fear. You'll see through his or her contact lens, and you will say, no, that apple, that apple's rotten. No, not that. So we will be living in the Matrix. So the future of surrogates and exoskeletons could be the space program. It costs $10,000 a pound to put anything in near-Earth orbit. That is your weight in solid gold. The next time you want to go in orbit, sure, buy gold, the equivalent of your weight, and you too can go into outer space. To put you on the moon costs $100,000 a pound. To put you on Mars costs $1 million a pound. That is your weight in diamonds. So why not send drones, avatars, surrogates to the moon controlled by astronauts sitting in their living room, and firemen dealing with dirty, dangerous, dull jobs? Why not have somebody sitting in the comfort of his living room energize these surrogates? So exoskeletons and computerized prosthetics, they are here today. In the future, they may go into outer space and into the construction field and revolutionize education. Now, let's talk about the big one, uploading memories into the mind. Last year at Wake Forest University and also Los Angeles, the first memory was recorded and uploaded successfully. Here's what they did. They took a mouse and they had the mouse learn how to sip water. Then the mouse forgot this trick, but they recorded it. They recorded the hippocampus right there. That is the place where memory is processed. They recorded it. Then after the mouse forgot how to do it, they played it back into the hippocampus and the mouse remembered. This has now been done with false memories. You can actually put false memories into a mouse and they will remember things that they never did. And next is chimpanzees and primates. Very soon we will start to do this with primates, and after that, Alzheimer's patients. The short-term goal of this is to create a brain pacemaker shown on the upper right. A brain pacemaker could be our future. As our brain deteriorates, the hippocampus deteriorates fastest. Your short-term memories start to disintegrate, and we may be able to get a brain prosthetic, a pacemaker, to upload memories of who are you, where do you live, what do your children look like, and things like that. And then even beyond that, maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to upload a vacation you never had, or courses you flunked in college. Workers will be able to learn new skills as technology progresses by uploading the memories necessary to master a new technological skill. This could affect the job market. Students can learn calculus by pushing a button, okay? This also raises legal questions, because what happens if a criminal uploads a false memory into your mind? Now, there's the hippocampus in the middle. When it is damaged, you lose the ability to form long-term memories. The most famous case was Mr. H.M. many decades ago. He had an injury during surgery, and he lost his long-term memory. When you greeted him, in fact, I was on a TV program with him once. When you greet him, he shakes your hand and says, "Oh, hello, how are you?" Then later, he forgets that he ever met you, and he starts all over again. Hello, glad to meet you." And he did this for decades. Once, when he was an old man, he saw himself in a mirror, and he was horrified, because he thought he was a young man, saying, hello, how are you, every time someone came in the door. He was an old man. He was horrified. But then he forgot the memory of being horrified, and it was back to hello, how are you again. In fact, his story is so strange, it's been made into 2 movies. 50 First Dates with Drew Barrymore and Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. 2 movies about the man who relives that same moment over and over again. That's what happens with damage from the hippocampus. And now at Berkeley, what they're doing is something that is outrageous. Videotaping a thought. How can you videotape a dream? Well, here's how you do it. This is the brain in an MRI scan. You analyze it for 30,000 centers of electrical activity, and you get 30,000 dots. These 30,000 dots represent a map of energy flows in the brain. Then a computer program recognizes these dots and has a dictionary, and from it creates a picture of what you are looking at. MRI machines today are huge, bulky, but in the future they're going to be a lot smaller. On the right, an MRI machine built in Germany the size of a briefcase. The size of a briefcase. According to the laws of physics, the smallest MRI machine that is compatible with the laws of physics is this big. You will have one day an MRI machine in your medicine cabinet. You will have more computer power in your medicine cabinet than a modern university hospital, according to the physicists who built that thing on the right. And here's how we do it. We MRI the brain, look at electrical activity, construct a matrix of 30,000 dots, and a computer program prints this out. These are some of the first pictures of a thought. On the left is Steve Martin. Next to it is the mental image that you create of Steve Martin in your mind, recreated as a photograph. And we can do it for many kinds of objects. Again, these pictures are fuzzy, but hey, look, it's only 30,000 dots. A typical picture may have up to 1 million pixels. On the left, an elephant, a person, an airplane. And then, when I went to Berkeley, and I interviewed these people who are doing this experiment, I asked them what happens if you fall asleep. And they said, yes, they have fallen asleep in this machine. The MRI machine keeps on chugging away and creates an approximation of what you are dreaming about. This has also proven another old wives' tale. There's something called lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is when you are awake, when you are dreaming. You know you are dreaming. You can actually walk and control the direction of the dream. How many people in this room have ever, at some point in their life, felt that they were awake even in the middle of a dream? Raise your hand. Well, lucid dreaming is something that's written up in Buddhist texts. It's a very ancient phenomenon. There are lessons about how to become a lucid dreamer. You have to take notes. You have to have a notebook of dreams. And in Germany, West Germany, last year, they proved it's correct. They took a lucid dreamer, put him in an MRI machine, and he controlled the direction of the dream. And so Leonardo DiCaprio, in the movie Inception, the movie is not so far-fetched because we might be able to actually redirect the direction of a dream. And now, let's talk about President Barack Obama's initiative. Why does the President of the United States want to dump with the Europeans $1 billion to create Brain 2.0, a disk that mimics your brain, like the genome? Because the short-term goal is to understand mental illness. You realize that many familiar people from Hollywood, from the music industry, suffer from bipolar disorder. On the upper left is Margot Kidder of the Superman movies. Several years ago, she was found wandering stark naked behind garbage cans as a homeless woman. She suffers from bipolar disorder, as many famous actors and actresses, including Princess Leia of Star Wars. Well, we can brain scan these people now, and we find something amazing. When you talk to yourself, your left temporal lobe is excited and generates voices. That's how you talk to yourself. But in these people who are schizophrenic, they generate voices without their permission. Without their knowledge or permission, voices are generated in their mind. If one day a voice all of a sudden erupts in your mind without your permission, you would think you are mad. That is madness. And we see it in schizophrenics under a brain scan. And we can now look at history through the lens of brain scans. This is Joan of Arc. She said she talked to God. It turns out that if you suffer from epileptic lesions, about 10-20% of people who suffer from epileptic lesions suffer from hyper-religiosity. They see ghosts, demons everywhere. If it rains, it's because it's punishment. If you fall down, a demon pushed you down. They suffer from hyper-religiosity. And it's now possible to create a helmet and induce this effect deliberately with the flick of a switch. This is called the God helmet. The God helmet, you've probably seen it on TV, there have been specials about it. The God helmet beams electromagnetic radiation into the mind, duplicating this effect. And you feel that you are in the presence of a great spirit. And so what did these scientists do? They decided to get an atheist and a believer and put them in the God helmet. The atheist was Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins, the biologist, he's a famous atheist. They put the God helmet on him. And then they put the God helmet on nuns to see whether you can shake their belief in a deity. Well, afterwards, they interviewed Richard Dawkins. Do you believe in God? After having the sensation of being with the eternal being. And he said, no, he's still an atheist. But the nuns said something interesting. The nuns' belief in God was not shaken. The nuns said, God created us with a telephone in our mind, so we can communicate with God. And therefore, they saw the God helmet as proof of God's grace. The point is, you can't win. You're not going to change. You're not going to change anyone's belief with something like a God helmet. But now, let's talk about super genius. Let's talk about humans who are off scale, superhuman abilities. This gentleman here has taken a helicopter ride over New York City Harbor, including Manhattan, and has drawn the entire harbor, including all of Manhattan, from memory from one helicopter ride. And if you want to see it, go to New York City, Terminal 1 JFK Airport. Look up. You will see a mural. All of the skyscrapers, all the lights, bridges, tunnels, everything from memory. This guy has also done Hong Kong, he's done London, and many other places. And also, there's a young boy, as a child, a bullet went through the left temporal lobe of his brain. Another guy dived into a swimming pool, also hit the left temporal lobe of his brain. Both of them became super mathematical geniuses. It turns out this effect can be induced by injury to the left temporal lobe. Now tonight, after this lecture, do not pick up a hammer. Do not bang yourself trying to become the next Einstein. It doesn't work that way, okay? These people are incredible. You can ask them, what were you doing 30 years ago on May 2nd at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? And they will say, well, I was reading page 320. You want me to recite the paragraph I was reading? One gentleman, Kim Peek, memorized 15,000 books and can recite line by line any page out of 15,000 books. Some of us can't even remember the comic book we read last night. Think of what these guys can do. Now, how can they do this? Well, we're not sure, but one theory is, we used to think that forgetting was a natural process. You learn, and then the memory degrades with time. Every textbook says that's the way memory works. But we now realize that maybe, just maybe, that's not true. That forgetting requires complex biochemical mechanisms. In other words, these people have forgotten how to forget. They remember, but the forgetting mechanism is broken. And therefore, there's no erasing of these memories that go back 30, 40 years. One of these people, a woman in Los Angeles, says that her vision is like split level. One part of her vision is what's happening in reality, and the other vision is what happened to her 30 years ago. Reliving a day 30 years ago. And she finds it annoying. And she wishes it would go away. But she's just paralyzed by photographic memory. And then we have Asperger's and genius. The greatest genius in all of science, bar none, was Sir Isaac Newton. When he was 23 years old, he discovered calculus at the rate at which you learn it in college. He discovered the universal law of gravitation, and he discovered a binomial theorem when he was 23 years old. But he's not someone you'd want to have dinner with. He had no social skills that we know of. He was not the kind of person who would chit-chat with you. He had, we think, Asperger's syndrome. And if you want to see what Asperger's syndrome looks like, watch The Big Bang Theory on CBS television. Many Nobel Prize winners, Paul Dirac, creator of quantum field theory, he also perhaps suffered from Asperger's syndrome. And then there is Albert Einstein. His brain is still with us. In 1955, when Albert Einstein died, the doctor doing the autopsy kidnapped the brain, took it home, put it inside a jar in his living room for about 30 years, drove cross country in a Buick with Einstein's brain in a mayonnaise jar. Amazing what Einstein's brain had to go through. Now it's at Princeton University, and the brain is a little bit different. If you go through my book, I give you the details of how Einstein's brain is a little bit different from our brain. And now we can also reanalyze Freudian psychology. Freud talked about the unconscious mind, and we now realize that the mind is like a large corporation. A large corporation has a very small nerve center, a CEO, but the CEO does not have to know everything that's happening in the mailroom. Therefore, most of the brain's activity is unconscious, like a large corporation. Not only that, not only is the unconscious mind necessary, but also emotions. Why do we have emotions? We have emotions because they provide a rapid-fire response to emergencies. If you see a tiger, your prefrontal cortex will debate whether or not the tiger is strong, weak, or whatever. Emotions say, run. You don't want to debate the finer points of, lion anatomy. So emotions serve a purpose. That is also found in a corporation, which has to have emergency efforts to put out fires independent of the CEO. And we also see the superego, the id, and the ego at work. In fact, the pleasure center is located right here in the nucleus accumbens. We've located precisely your pleasure center. Scientists have hooked up a mouse with this pleasure center hooked up to a telegraph key, so that when you hit the telegraph key, the mouse has a great time. It turns out the mouse will hit the telegraph key twice a second until it dies of starvation. They went up the scale to dolphins. Dolphins have been connected to this device, whereby if the dolphin goes forward, it hits a plate which stimulates its pleasure center. So the dolphin would also hit the pleasure center several times a second until it realized, I am dying. I will die. The dolphin stopped, went out, grabbed food, and then came back and stimulated itself. Dolphin's not stupid. And then I want to talk about something that has consumed the lives of thousands of people throughout history, and that is, what is consciousness? If you go to the library or go to the internet, you'll find 20,000 articles written about consciousness by ministers, psychologists, psychiatrists, 20,000 articles. Never in the history of science have so many people devoted so much time to produce so little. There is no consensus as to what is consciousness. In fact, Robert Frost once defined consciousness as something that starts up when you wake up in the morning and then stops as soon as you go into your office. So, I'm a physicist. I decided to use a physicist's point of view to define consciousness, which will give you a numerical ranking by which we can analyze robots, by which we can analyze animals and people, a numerical ranking of consciousness. When we physicists look at a star, a planet, or an electron, how do we think? We physicists try to construct a model, a simplified model of the planet or electron in space, locating its position in space. Then we try to analyze this interaction with other planets, other electrons, other stars, and then finally we run the videotape forward in time to understand how the solar system, the electron, evolves with time. So we look at space, then we look at relationship to others, and then we look at running the videotape forward in time, predicting the future. I'm now going to give you a definition of consciousness. Consciousness is the continual creation of models, feedback loops, which describe a model of our place in space, time, and relationship to others. So how does animal consciousness differ from ours? We humans see the future. We spend the bulk of our time daydreaming, planning, strategizing. Animals have no concept of tomorrow. So let's rank consciousness numerically. I say that 1 unit of consciousness is a single feedback loop, like a thermostat. A thermostat registers temperature and changes surrounding. I call that 1 unit of consciousness. A flower has maybe 10 units of consciousness. It measures light, it measures water, gravity, temperature. A flower has many feedback loops, maybe 10 or so, but they are stationary. Once they become mobile, they become level 1 conscious. Remember the reptilian brain in the back of our brain? The reptilian brain represents level 1 consciousness, understanding your position in space, but not much more. And then evolution gave us level 2 consciousness, that is the animal brain, the mammalian brain, which gives us emotions, which determines your social hierarchy, where you are in the tribe. Emotions, I call that level 2 consciousness, and level 3 consciousness is what humans do alone. And that is, we see tomorrow. To the best of our ability, animals do not see tomorrow. When it gets cold, they hibernate instinctively. When we feel the air getting cold, we pack our bags, we have to do our laundry, we have to do this and that. It's a pain in the butt planning for the future. But that's what the brain does. Level 3 consciousness. Now, you may say to yourself, well, I don't believe it. Maybe there are things outside your definition of level 1, 2, 3 that cannot be summarized by space, relationship to others, and time, like humor. Humor is so ephemeral that how can you possibly judge humor by level 1, 2, and 3? Well, let's talk about a joke. Jokes are funny because we actually hear the joke and then we complete the dots. We finish the joke. But then when the punchline comes, it's different from we mentally anticipated and we think it's funny. For example, W.C. Fields was once asked a question about the upbringing of young people. And he was asked the question, are you in favor of clubs for youth? And he said, yes, but only if kindness fails. And Teddy Roosevelt's daughter was asked about gossip. And she said, if you have nothing good to say about other people, then please sit down next to me. And the Bible says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, except do it first. Now, why are these, quote, funny? Because when you hear about kindness towards children and clubs, are they good for children? You say, yes, you complete the dots. Your brain automatically predicts the future. The future is, yes, clubs are good for people, for young people. But then W.C. Fields twisted by saying, only if kindness fails. Then we would use clubs on kids. So there's a twist. And your mother told you that if you can't say anything nice about somebody, then don't say anything at all, right? Your mother told you that. And then the twist is when it's not what you thought. And when you deconstruct it, it's not funny anymore because you know the ending. Once you know the ending, it's not funny anymore. And so what I'm trying to tell you is the essence of humor is level 3 consciousness. Why are jokes funny? Because they violate the level 3 consciousness, and evolution means that we have to anticipate the unexpected in the forest. We had to know all sorts of bizarre endings if we're going to survive in a jungle where everything is unexpected. That's why humor was very important for our existence. And now, let's talk about robots. What level consciousness do robots have? Well, I think it's kind of obvious. Robots, like Asimov, have the intelligence of a cockroach. They can barely figure out where they are in a room. Many robots take about 6 hours for them to walk across the room. Does that remind you of any of your friends, any of your relatives? 6 hours to walk across the room. Therefore, are robots conscious? And the answer is yes. They have level 1 consciousness. They can barely understand their location in a room. However, sometimes we think that robots will eventually have emotions. So the beginning of emotional robots is taking place now. A little bit of level 2, but not much more. So we see how primitive robots are. They're at level 1, they can barely navigate across the room. They have a little bit of emotion, they can smile, but not much more. But no level 3. Now you may say to yourself, now wait a minute, computers can evolve black holes. Computers can evolve solar systems. Yeah, in only one dimension. Only one dimension can computers simulate the future. Now this also means, if this theory is correct, it means we can rank intelligence as well. IQ exams don't work very well. People with high IQ as children, many of them wind up as petty criminals, marginal individuals, losers in society. So what is the only indicator of success that psychologists have found that is reproducible, testable, falsifiable in children that lasts for 30 years? There's only one characteristic that children have that you can measure that correlates with success 30 years after the test was done. Does anyone know what that one characteristic is? Psychologists have done this test over and over again, tracked these kids for decades. It is delayed gratification as seen by the marshmallow test. Do you want a marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows an hour from now? And what is the essence of delayed gratification? Level 3 consciousness. They see the future. That 2 marshmallows are better than 1 marshmallow. A college education is better than a high school education. Shortcuts are bad. That means they predict the future. Think of a safecracker. A safecracker may have low IQ, flunked out of grade school. But a safecracker can simulate the future of a bank robbery better than the police. That means they are more intelligent than police because they see the future in a way that the police don't. So the point I'm raising is something simple. Robots have a long ways to go. They're not at level 3, they're at basically level 1, like a cockroach. But that doesn't mean that they can't eventually become intelligent. Who knows, maybe one day late in this century, robots will become smarter than us. It's possible. In which case, they may put us in zoos, put us behind bars, throw peanuts at us, and make us dance behind bars. I say when that comes, let us put a chip in their brain to shut them off before they get murderous thoughts. Let me now wind up on the following note. We talked about the brain project of Obama. But if we can create a disk with your connectome on it, and you die, your connectome lives on. And so then the question is, did you really die? Well, it depends on how you define you. If you are a biological entity consisting of wetware and a mind, then yes, you have died. You are gone. But if all your memories, your personality, your hopes, dreams, your genome survives, then did you really die? In some sense, no. But that assumes that you are information. And if that's true, then maybe one day we will have a brain net. A brain net. Perhaps within the next decade or 2 decades, we will have not just digital sent on the internet, we will have emotions. We will have feelings, memories sent on the internet. Teenagers are going to love it. On Facebook, they'll send emotions ricocheting across Facebook, memories of their first kiss, memories of their first date. I mean, it's going to explode. And your kids are going to say, Mom, Dad, you lived in a world where the internet was digital? How could you? How could you live in that world? No feeling, no emotions, no experiences. Well, it's coming, a brain net. And the movies. Why is it the movies and the Oscars always talk about a flat screen with sound? I mean, think about it. Isn't that stupid? Everyone making all this hay about a flat screen and sound? Why not send emotions through the entertainment channels? Why not have full immersion entertainment? That could be the future of entertainment. And Isaac Asimov's favorite short story was sending consciousness into outer space. Maybe one day we'll take the connectome, it only has a zettabyte of memory, put it on a laser beam. I calculate how big the laser beam would have to be and shoot it into outer space at the speed of light. This could be our ultimate destiny, to explore the universe as beings made out of pure energy, all consistent with what is known about the laws of physics and the laws of computer science. And now I'd like to end on one note and then take a few questions. When I was a child, my role model was Albert Einstein. And my favorite Einstein story is this. When Einstein was an old man, he was tired of giving the same talk over and over again. So one day his chauffeur came up to him, and the chauffeur said, "Professor, I'm really a part-time actor. I've heard your speech so many times I've memorized it. So why don't we switch places? I will put on a mustache, I will put on a wig, I will be the great Einstein, and you can take a rest to be my chauffeur." Well, Einstein loved the joke, so they switched places. This went along famously until one day, a mathematician in the back asked a very difficult question. And Einstein thought, oh, the game is up. But then the chauffeur said, that question is so elementary that even my chauffeur here can answer it for you. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience. So I think we have some time for questions. So,
One perfect question.
oh, one question. Then,
Hard stop right now. So
okay.
My question is, thank you very much, first of all. How is digital brain connected to biochemistry of our body? Because a lot of things, a lot of like neurons are triggered not by anything else, but you know, some hormones or some, let's say, our body that triggers.
Yeah, you ask a very important question. First of all, is the brain a digital computer? For 50 years, we thought yes, and the answer is really no. In some sense, we run a wild goose chase for the last 50 years, thinking that the brain is a digital computer or a Turing machine. A Turing machine has inputs, outputs, and a program. But the brain has no operating system. The brain has no programming. There's no Windows. There's no Pentium chip. There's no CPU. There are no subroutines. Nothing. There's nothing in a computer that even vaguely looks like a digital computer. So what is the brain? The brain is a learning machine. It is a neural network of sorts which rewires itself after learning every task. Therefore, it does use some digital, some analog in a combination, but as you correctly pointed out, reading what these neurons do is beyond our capability. So what we do in the laboratory is we cheat. We simply see a configuration of neurons corresponding to moving your arm like this. Then we create a dictionary that this means certain number of neurons. Therefore, when you think going like this, it'll excite those neurons. So we get a dictionary this way. Very clumsy, but that's what we do in the laboratory because we cannot read a neural network's messages and convert it into digital. That was the problem. Now we have computers that can do that. Create this dictionary. That's how we get these gorgeous pictures of thought. That's how we can move robot arms. But it's all done by cheating because we really don't know how this neural networks, how it operates. And that's why we want to create Brain 2.0. That's why the Brain Initiative is being initiated, so that we can see the miswiring of people with OCD, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. Diseases, by the way, which are even mentioned in the Bible. They're so old.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the perfect question.
Thank you very much.
Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.